Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I have a sketchbook tour to bring you all, and I'm super excited to talk about this sketchbook. So without further ado, let's just get this started. So let's take a look at the first sketchbook spread that I have here. When I was doing this sketchbook spread, I was just warming up, seeing how I wanted this sketchbook to be. I didn't really know what direction that I wanted to take the sketchbook in. I was just doing some doodles here and there. Here's a very light sketch. I don't know if you can really see the body here, but it's a light sketch of a body and some shapes here and there. This was really just drawing things just to draw things. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. Here's an observational drawing of a remote controller that I did. I really like how it came out. In this page, I really wanted to continue experimenting with warm-ups and seeing how that would affect my drawings. So here I have like some fabric warm-ups, some sphere and shape warm-ups, and perspective warm-ups here. And around this time was when I started doing sketches based off of an art school course that I was taking about Mark Brunette. And here we have a 4-point perspective, which was really fun and interesting. If anything, I just wish I finished it, but I'm happy that I left it here because this is just a sketch, just a warm-up, so that I can feel more confident while I'm actually doing the illustrations. So yeah, here is a little warm-up exercise where I would draw a line and then trace over it like 8 times, trying not to go outside of that line, and it's a warm-up for inking. Over here, we have a warm-up for the arms and trying to get a good feeling of how the arm is when it is stretched all the way out, when it's flexed, and when it's relaxed, and how it's defined when it's in those different positions and stuff like that. And honestly, doing these exercises was actually really helpful in getting a feeling of how the muscles move and how it looks like under this part of the arm. So that was really cool and really exciting. It didn't really teach me so much, only got me so far because I didn't really dwell deep into this research. I kind of just left it here, which is definitely something that I'll change now. Like when I'm doing research now, I really make sure that I go into the topic that I'm researching so that I have a really good understanding of the material that I am learning, and that is something that I learned recently. So looking back at this, I was like, I would do this differently. Moving on though, we have some hand warm-ups. These hands turned out pretty good, but again, you know, I only got so much information from these drawing research because I didn't really dwell so much into how the hand moves and stuff like that, and how to break it down into simpler shapes. I just kind of drew the picture because for a long time that's how I was taught. You know, I wasn't really taught to really understand why the things they were and understand the why behind it all. I was kind of taught to just draw what was in front of you and learn based off of that. But it's definitely not how I learn now, and I'll talk about it more as the sketchbook progresses. But yeah, it's kind of weird seeing how I used to draw back then and how uneducational it was. Over here, we have some more smaller warm-ups here, but here, obviously it's a guy. I honestly really like how these came out. I think these came out pretty awesome, and it did kind of help me in feeling more confident in drawing the male figure, because for a long time I didn't really draw men, I only drew females, and doing these drawings helped me gain a lot of knowledge on how the body is and the different types of body types as well. So it's pretty awesome. I like the notes that I did to help me improve on the material better, and we'll see how that plays in on other drawings and other sketches. I guess the intent behind this was really to understand the male form, but as I said before, this isn't really good material for researching and for basing off of, because it's just a good drawing, you know, and obviously there's nothing bad about a good drawing, but it's not really helping me the most it can. Obviously it did help me because, you know, with mileage comes skill, and there's no denying that, right? But I could have definitely helped myself by understanding the form more and breaking it down even more to just have that extra confidence when it comes to drawing the male figure. Over here, we have some more perspective warm-ups. These are really fun. I honestly quite like these. Over here, we're playing around with some tubular structures. Honestly, it was pretty fun doing these sketches. It really helped broaden my horizon with perspective. And here, I was trying out some acrylic paint markers, acrylic brush paint markers, which I did, which was really fun. This is the first little example that I did trying out the acrylic paint markers. And here I wrote things to improve. Don't let color get in the way of good values. That is a really good note, and it is definitely something that I learned recently, and that is just an awesome takeaway. And then with that, I came up with this one, which is pretty awesome. And since the acrylic markers don't really give me a lot of range, it was really interesting to play around with yellows and blues and purples in there to really get that dark color, and it was really fun, honestly. And the line work also did some good heavy lifting with some hatching in there to really emphasize those dark points. Here I was doing some really quick, really rough observational sketches of a Rubik's Cube and putting it in different positions and different perspectives and just doing it really rough so that I loosen up, because I think at this point I was getting a little too nitpicky with how I wanted things to look, and I really wanted to just improve my drawing speed. So I think these were actually timed. I don't remember how much time I gave myself with these. I wish I wrote it down. And here are more of those Rubik's Cube drawings, putting in different perspectives and different positions. This, I don't really know how much it really improved. I don't feel the effects so much of this, so I don't know if this was really a good warm-up and drawing exercise, to be honest. Here is a drawing of Poison Ivy. I got really inspired by Jim Lee and his artwork. I was looking at a lot of his videos and he just draws so quickly, and it was so inspiring, and I wanted to try something like that of my own and kind of do something in his style. And there are some parts of it that I like I really like the branch that she is sitting on, and the pose is really good as well. The hair is pretty cool also, but there are things that I also do not like about it. I think there's too much noise around her figure and her subject and her hair as well. But you know, for my first attempt at doing a sketch that is inspired by Jim Lee art, I don't think it turned out too bad. There are definitely things that I've learned about loosening up and just doing things quicker and not putting so much emphasis on it being quote-unquote perfect or really refined and just drawing just to draw, you know. And it was pretty fun getting into that mentality. Over here, this is when the sketchbook gets really interesting and really fun. Here I was taking a master class, like a boot camp course done by Gabriel Quinn, and this master course taught me so much stuff. This was part of an assignment where we had to draw 20 rough compositions incorporating perspective and characters, and this really broadened my horizon and really allowed me to get a good grip on drawing environments in perspective and characters in perspective. And this was really fun. I really enjoyed this. These are drawings of my world. I don't know if you can really understand them well. I don't know how clear they read to you guys. When I was doing this, I kind of just came up with two characters, and they're called the Beetle Bros, so that's pretty fun. So here we have the Beetle Bros pulling weeds from their farm. Here we have them fishing. Here they're eating, and this little drawing here is an upshot of them standing in the rain with these like leaf umbrellas and having mountains in the distance, which is pretty fun. I think this one turned out pretty cool. Here they're racing each other. We have like some finishing lines, and this one is like, oh no, I don't know if I'm gonna win or not. I think the scaling of the little characters are a little off, but that doesn't really matter because these are rough sketches, and I was just focusing on getting as many ideas as I could down on the page. Here is a little sketch of them diving under the water with some fishes, and they're investigating a little shiny object. And then here is the continuation of that story and showing what they found underneath that water. Here is a dragonfish celebration in the beetle farming village. So we have some insight on the lore and kind of religion that they are in. This one was really fun to draw, to be honest. I really like how it goes back in that perspective and the clouds reinforce that perspective. I don't know if you can really see it so clearly in this one, but it was really fun. I think the scaling is a bit off because this like parade flow is massive and compared to the little people. Like even like the shape of this fin is like so huge compared to this house. So that's definitely something that I have to work on a little bit, but it was really fun doing this one. And I can see myself turning this into an illustration as well. we have some more of those composition sketches. Here we have the Beetle Bros resting after a long day of work, and you can see that with the big bag of wheat that they have here. Here they are sleeping on top of a big cow. I really love how this one came out. Here are the Beetle Bros arguing over a broken vase. You see one Beetle Bro here holding up a broken vase, and then there's a shattered vase in the background. He's like, I cannot believe you just broke my favorite vase. And he's like, bro, I literally do not know what you're talking about. But here is a beetle person catching a huge fish, and it's an up angle shot. This one's pretty fun. I like how the clouds reinforce the perspective lines and really make it feel grand and you know, that type of feeling. This one is a top-down shot of beetles working in a farm, showing their living style and what they are known for. This is a fish market, and it is the same fish as this one, and it is the same guy as this one. So it's cool to see that continuation of where this one ended up. Okay, I really love how this one came out. I always love market scenes. I think they're an awesome way to show the culture and design of the culture as well. And you have like a girl shocked, like, oh my gosh, that's such a huge fish. I turned this one into an illustration, and I was going to show you, but actually I'm planning on doing a video talking about my experience in these classes, and in that video I'll show you how this turned out. So you'll have to stay tuned, I guess. In this one here is a 3-point perspective shot looking up at this beetle here. This one probably a little harder to understand, but this beetle person here and the other beetle person here reaching up for like a huge fruit, and there's some trees in the foreground here that go all the way up, and then you have the forest in the background. This one was pretty cool, and I turned this one into an illustration as well. Here we have the final 3. I really love how these ones turned out. I think my confidence in doing quick sketches and ideas is really shining through, and was able to really increase in these. I think these have a lot more clarity than the other ones. Here we have a beetle boyfriend checking out this huge fish, and the beetle girlfriend is like, I cannot believe you're doing that. There's a little play on the meme that I'm sure you guys have seen. Here is kind of a very strong kind of continuation off of this scene, and she's pregnant and he's helping her. He set up all this food for her. I think this is a really cute, really heartfelt moment. I really like this one. And over here is more of a continuation. She has twins. Oh my goodness. And they're having this huge feast, and then they're just here having this intimate moment. And I want to try a fisheye perspective, and I think it was able to turn out pretty cool, and taking it a big turn in style and media and character. This is the character that I was working on for a world that I'm world building on the side, and she's like a warrior character. She has this staff and these tattoos on her leg. She's a pretty cool girl. She has these like arm wraps that are controlling this huge beast with really long legs. Over here we have some more characters of that world. Here he has like chain tattoos and like a bear tattoo, so he's like really strong. He has these chains that he can summon. He has these gigantic swords. He's just a cool guy. And then here is an archer. He has a lot more agile, and he has a crane tattoo. Here is some skeleton studies that I did for that masterclass that I spoke about earlier for Gabriel Quinn. And actually the rest of the sketches here I think are for that masterclass, so just go through these next sketches with that in your mind that these are for that masterclass. Here, skeleton studies, but this is really where I started breaking it down to really understand the skeleton, because to be honest, I really was not looking forward to doing these skeleton studies, but the more I was doing it, the more I found it more interesting to do, and I was really simplifying it in a way that I would understand how the rib cage is just an egg, and then the pelvis is like a heart shape, and the measurements of the leg and the arms. So this one was really to just get a feel of the skeleton and then simplifying it further, and then on this page simplifying it even more to breaking it down to just an egg shape, you know, really breaking down the figure and stuff like that. And then I started delving deeper into the research, and I found how male skeletons and female skeletons are different from each other, and how they have very subtle changes that make a big difference in the overall structure of the body. For example, the male pelvis is a lot slimmer and a lot lot narrower than the female pelvis, which is a lot wider, because female pelvises, they have to adapt for childbirth. Same with how they are proportioned in general, with the male rib cage being bigger than the female rib cage and the female rib cage being smaller, making the male skeleton more top heavy and the female skeleton more bottom heavy. And how the skulls are different as well, and this is mainly because male bones have a higher bone density than female bones, so that means that the male bones are a lot thicker than the female bones, and how that shows and reflects in their skulls, and how the male skull is a lot more rigid and a lot more dense than the female skull, which is a lot more dainty. So yeah, this is observations on research that I did. So it's really cool to see how they differ between the two genders. Over here, I did a simplified side skeleton study, getting a feel of how it looks like on the side. And this is the most interesting part of the skeleton to me, and how the shoulder blade move as the arms move. And it's really cool seeing that rotation and how it exits out of the silhouette of the rib cage. It's really cool to see that movement and capture that movement. Here I did it as well from the front, here from the back, and showing how those motions of the arm going up affects the shoulder blades as well. And then from the side, here in a 3/4, resting down, and then the arms reaching forward, and how that shoulder blade moves so much outside of the rib cage. I think I moved it a little too much. Maybe I should bring it back a little bit, but how at the end of the day, you know, the shoulder blade is going to move with the arm, and that is so cool to see that. And this is how it looks like, facing upwards, and seeing how that shoulder blade comes out of the silhouette cast from the rib cage. Like here, you can see it. Here I was doing the skeleton and adding the figure on top of it, but I was noticing how the skeleton was too thick here and the legs were too short here, and I had to redraw it so that it could look better, you know. Here is where it got to a point where I was really happy with it, and you can see how when the arm is pushed out, that shoulder blade comes out a little bit and creates this shape here of the arm, you know, coming out, and that's also like the lat muscles that are attached to that shoulder blade. So it's really cool to see how the effects of the skeleton moving affects the skin on top of it and the overall form of the figure. And I'm just pushing it more and adding that skin and muscle to it. And here I was doing some drawing designs for the Kabuto people, which are the beetle people that were in my world, and that are the beetle people that I drew here for this part of the assignment, these beetle people. And this is how their design was before. It was a very basic chest plate, but some of the things I was not really a fan of, and I changed it to follow the muscle mass even more, and I think it turned out so awesome and was such an amazing decision to do. And this is how the back looks, and it leaves space open here for the shoulder blade movement, which is really awesome. I'm really happy that I did that. I think this looks really cool, and I think that it following the form of the muscles really helps it feel organic and helps a lot with the mobility as well. And then here's with the shell. This is without the shell so that you can see how it looks like without the shell, and then this is with the shell, and how that gap between the bottom of the shell and the back to leave room for more spine movement. And then here is showing how the chest plate for the Kabuto, for the shell, moves around as the body moves, and how these different layers move in according to how the arm move, of how the chest is puffed out, and then the arms going up and it going forward, and you see how that shoulder blade juts out there, because as we saw before, when the arms are pushed out, so is the shoulder blades, and the shoulder blades follow that movement, creating that part of the body jutting out. So that's pretty cool. And then here I was doing a little study of how the chest muscles is structured and applying that to the Kabuto chest plate to, you know, further follow the form of the chest muscles, which is pretty awesome. I'm really happy with these sketches, and it helped me a ton in just understanding the body and stuff like that, and also helped me in simplifying the muscles, because these follow the muscles. So really having that chest plate follow the flow of the muscles allows me to better apply it to drawings of characters who are not Kabuto and just normal people. Here we have the back without the shell to just reinforce that knowledge that I learned here and drawing it again, but this time I'm drawing it with the shell and how the back looks like with the shell here, and then how it looks like with the shell open and the wings fully extended, but when the wings retract back into the shell, they fold up so that they can actually be contained in the shell. This was really fun to do. I really enjoyed doing these Kabuto drawings. Here, I wanted to draw how the female looked, or how the woman Kabuto looked, but since the chest is covered, the breast is covered by the chest plate, I wanted to world build and see how they would create milk for their children. So here, I did it so that it incorporated the wings more, and when the female Kabuto, the mother, is pregnant, her wings produce this pollen that can be wiped down, and you see it here, how the mother or husband would wipe the pollen from her wings, and then she would put that pollen on a milk flower, which is a type of flower that is a flower. But when that pollen that the mother produced, when that pollen gets into the flower, it closes up and then it starts reacting with the pollen, and then it starts producing milk, and then it closes up, and then it's like a little milk bottle for the baby. So I thought that was a really awesome way in making it make sense, you know, and also have it intimate with the mother and personal with the mother. So yeah, that's how the female anatomy of the Kabuto is changed with the chest plate. Here, I was designing a character lineup of the Kabuto people and playing around with different silhouettes and what I wanted them to communicate based off of the character and personality, and I came here to a more solid state of how I wanted them to look like. And we had the father, twins, mother, and a lost boy. I wonder where he came from. And then the twins are the Beetle Bros that were in these drawings. So it's cool to develop them more and develop their family more, and it was really fun doing these. And I also did a more finalized character lineup, but you will have to wait until the next video when I make that video. Here is some plannings for how I want the father's design to look. This one was his first design, but I really didn't like it. He looked like a bathing suit, so I changed it to look more like a fisherman because I wanted him to be a fisherman character, and to make the beard bigger because I really wanted him to look scruffy. I wanted him to have a very big build to make him look like a protector, and that he is big and strong. I really love the fish design that is here on his overalls. I think it's really fun and really cool. And I also did a little character expression, which I really love. I think it shows off his character really well. And I also put here to add a hat to his character because Vietnamese fishermen have like that straw hat that they put on, and they also have this kind of like coat that they put on that is also made of that straw, and I wanted to add that into his character, but it is interchangeable, like you can take it off and stuff like that to have that variation in his character design. And it also showed here how their clothing interacts with the shell and how the shirt is put over and it ties up here in the back so that it leaves room for the shell to be exposed. Here, I was playing around with the fish emblem and what it meant, and I really love this design. I think it shows the dynamic of the family with the big fish representing the father and the smaller fish representing the mother and the tiny fish representing the twins. And I wrote here, I don't know where I wrote it, or maybe it's just a note in my mind, how the mother made it as a gift to that father character. That's why he has it, and that's why it's so personalized to him, because she made it. But as the story progresses, which we'll see how the story progresses, it symbolizes the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit and unity of the early church to tie in with more biblical themes and more themes of Christianity, but familiar relationship remains at its core. And then here is a fish necklace used by early Christians as a secret identifier. I wonder why it had to be a secret, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, significant because these events have not transpired yet and we're still at this moment of the emblem. The fish necklace here is just something that the mother made as well to tie in to that design of the fish emblem and what the fish emblem means at this moment of time, which is the family, the Beetle People family. And this is the second character, which is the first twin. I wanted him to be very adventurous and very playful, and to show that in his design, I wanted his shirt to be very flowy and have a lot of motion to represent his playful nature and also show that in his expression. And in order to make this twin look similar or look identical to the other twin without making them like carbon copies of each other and just with the same design just drawn again, I gave him a birthmark that is a very significant signifier of who he is and how it affects his hair color as well, and have that the same on this guy and how he has that same birthmark and how it affects his hair color as well. And he has the same nose, that wide nose and wide mouth and thick eyebrows, so it's like that stays similar, and that same hair type is just his is longer and falls down over his face more. But I wanted him to be a very much more laid back character and a more chill guy character, and to show that in his design he has a very just a normal design. And I found that having the design more centered on the bottom half of the character makes him feel a lot more grounded, which I think is a really awesome way of showing the type of character that he is. And he has that fish necklace. Here is the design of the mother character, which was honestly really easy to get to. I had an idea of how I wanted her character design to look like. I put it down on the paper and it just stuck, and it stuck really well. And she has the same type of pants that he has, which can show that his personality is more similar to the mother and how his personality is more rambunctious, more ambitious, more playful, kind of shows how he takes from the father. So yeah, it's cool to see that play out in the design. And I wrote down that here in her aprons, it's like interchangeable to have like a house apron, a working apron, and an apron that she wears around her guests. And I thought it would be cool to show how the apron is stained to show that she is a working mother, she gets things done. And she also has a little fish jewelry in that hair stick that is holding her hair. And I really love her character design and her expression. I think it's a really fun sarcastic expression to show the dynamic between the two twins and the father character, which is really fun. And then here we have that lost boy, and you'll notice how he is a human. I wonder why he's different from the rest of them. I guess you'll have to wait and see. But he is a lost boy and he has a broken arm and an injured leg. I wonder why his arm is broken and his leg is injured, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I really love his expression as well. I think it's a really good addition to this dynamic, and it is a good opposition to this dynamic to keep that dynamic dramatic and interesting. And then here is just how that leg looks like beneath the wraps. Over here, I was taking some notes on how to make the character lineup stand out, like pushing shapes more and the ideas more, and really showing the personality and expressions and different lines of actions, and to explore a lot with the poses, which is something that I did in this little sketchbook, which I'll also show you guys, and to really explore the different poses that they're in and to show their character more, and to really commit to the shape that I'm doing and work on those shapes to really push and emphasize those shapes, and hinting at story, personality moments and expressions, and to really just make it feel alive, but to make sure that I am still aware of 3D forms and not to push it too much that it loses that believability, but to still be bold and inventive. That is what I did in this sketchbook here. So I'll show you guys these quick sketches that I did and exploration sketches that I did. It's nothing. I'm just joking. So the first one that I have here is for that father character. I wanted to show his personality and his expression and his pose to show that he is that big, strong character. But I feel like it didn't really show all aspects of his design. So I wanted to put some fishes that he was carrying to show that he is a fisherman character. And that's where I got into this one, which here shows that he is carrying that fisherman and I pushed his proportions even more, and I think that was a really fun decision, but I felt like I could push it further, you know? So here I was really pushing those lines of action to really reinforce it, and having those two lines of action with the motion of the fish here leading up to the face, and then his primary line of action here leading up to the face as well. And from there we got this one, which I'm really happy with. I think it really enforces those lines of motion, and making the fish like so huge really helps in, you know, just selling that larger than life feeling, and to show that he is super huge and strong, and he is a really skilled fisherman, because like holy moly, that is a huge fish, you know what I mean? So, and then you have these other line of fish that just create circular motions around the character, really highlighting the character really well, which I'm really happy with. And I also made sure to write some notes here that while I'm rendering the fish, fade it out near the bottom so that it does not take away from the character. So that is a very important note that I wrote. So yeah, that's the pose that I went for with the father character that I really love, and I really like the motion and energy of this pose, and I think it's really well. I wanted to also experiment with the expression, which is where I got here, where it's like that 3/4 facing up, very laughing expression, which is really awesome, and I think it shows off his character really well and really fun. And then here I was playing around with how I wanted the two twins to be posed in reaction to that big fish that he was carrying, and I really wanted this to be a very important moment in showing the character of the twins, of how this one is a lot more expressive and a lot more like loud, and this one is a lot more laid back, and he also has a pretty big fish, but you know, he's not making it as such a big deal as his father is, you know. So I refined it even more just to really get a better sense of how everything is going to look, and I changed it so that both of his hands is like holding his head, and like his other arms and other hands is holding his fishing spear. But here I kind of struggled to show the motion of the clothing, which I think is something that I went wrong with this character pose. I don't think it really showed his personality so much, but I definitely think that is a good learning experience to really have that realization that a pose that you did that you thought you liked doesn't really show the character and his personality in a way that you want it to, or her personality in the way that you want it to. So it's always amazing to really look back and see what worked and what didn't, and to experiment on how you can improve upon it in a way that you are really happy with the outcome. And then from there I further experimented and saw and drew how the twins look like compared to the father. Obviously I want the father to be a lot bigger, but I wanted to see if the pose that I had them in worked, and if it tells that story of him being shocked at the huge fish, which I really think it does. And I think here's when I got really inspired to do the character lineup, and I really loved how it was turning out. But there are still two other characters that I wanted to design, and that is where these two come in. And oh my goodness, drawing this mother character, it was just so easy, and really playing with the motion. I think this pose really shows off her design and her character a lot, especially with the sarcastic expression. And there was really no changes from here that I did into the character lineup, and I want her to be tying the knot of this lost boy and showing that relationship more, and he is obviously very grumpy. But yeah, I think this pose turned out really fun, but I also don't think it really showed off his design a lot, and it's something that I'm going to have to change as well when I get back into that character lineup. That marks the completion of these experimental sketches, and also the completion of this sketchbook. There is so much that I have learned in the journey of doing the sketchbook, coming up with these ideas and just putting them down. There is so much that I have learned, and I would love to tell you guys all about it, but you guys will have to wait until that moment arrives. But for now, this sketchbook is closed out, and that concludes this sketchbook tour. Stay tuned though when I post that video talking about my experience with that Gabriel Quinn master course to really see the conclusion of where these sketches led up to. So stay tuned for that. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it entertaining to watch. If parts of it were educational to you, that's awesome. Have a blessed day, and I will see you guys in the next video.